2017. We are in Uta Radio, and he is
RexxArkana.
Okay, from the band.
FGFC 820.
Okay, first, why that name of the band? Where it comes from, or
It's a really long story, but we don't tell people exactly what it means. People have been asking for, the whole time that the band has been around, what does it stand for?
Yeah.
But we don't, es un secreto.
Oh, okay.
We don't tell, so people sort of try to imagine maybe what FGFC stand for. And they think, es posible que significa por Dios, para país. For God, for country.
Oh.
This is not really what it means, but it's better than what it actually means. So, funciona.
Okay. Well, can you tell us how long have you been in music?
I started out as a DJ. I actually spent many years on the business side of music before I became an artist myself. I started out as a DJ, and then for many years I did radio promotions for college radio and for commercial radio. I had many zines in the 80s and the 90s. I had many magazines and zines that I did, and then it was sort of weird the way it happened, because again, the first project I had was Bruderschaft, and when my father got sick, I wrote it wasn't a song, it was just sort of, I just wrote how I was feeling, and some people saw it and they said, you should make this a song, and one thing led to another, and then Bruderschaft was born, and then that was really my first project, my first musical project where I was,
Your first
sort of on that side of it, yeah, and that was in 2003.
Yeah. Do you remember what was the music you still listened during your childhood?
Oh yeah, for sure. I grew up listening to disco.
Ah, disco.
Because I'm very old. So I grew up listening to disco, which if you think about, like the early EBM or even new wave, is really not so far from disco. It's quantized, syncopated dance beats, largely made, with electronic keyboards and computers. So, so I decided to try to find music that reminded me of that, and somehow I found industrial and simple.
Okay. About the songs, the lyrics, what are your influences? What do you think when you are creating your music?
I usually, so sometimes I will come up with not exactly entire versos, but like I will come up with maybe one frase or a couple of words that I know I want to use, or una idea, and then from this idea sigue todo. I just sort of put words together, and then I'll go to Dracos and I'll say I have this idea for a song, and then I'll kind of sing to him sort of how I'm hearing it in my head, and then he'll write around that. Or the other way is that he'll come up with sort of a new riff or something and play it for me, and then I'll just loop it and I'll just listen to it over and over and over and over and over. And as I listen to it, words start to, like, the first thing that comes is the cadence, like, how do you want to sing, at what part do you want to sing, and what part are you going to be quiet. And then once you have like a feel for how you want it to go, then it's just a matter of putting the words together and going from there. So I would like to do that with in Spanish language too, but it's difficult. It's very hard. For me, Spanish language is maybe a little bit easier than maybe for others, but one of the things that that sometimes can be silly is when you have bands where English is not their first language, and they write songs in English and they say things that are a little odd, and you say, this don't really make sense and so much. So, and I don't want to be that guy writing lyrics in Spanish. So we will see, maybe.
Oh, that's great. And well, was it difficult to record an album and then find a label and broadcast to the world?
No, only because like I said, I had spent so many years on the label side. Like I knew all that. I already worked for most of the labels in the scene, so they already knew me. And in fact, the whole thing that sort of gave me the confidence, in a sense, to kind of move forward with this project is we were doing a show at a club in New Jersey called QXT's that was Grendel and an Aslan faction. So two, old school bands. This would have been in the early 2000s, and during sound check, Grendel had sort of done his sound check, and he was finished, and I went up and I grabbed his microphone and I just started screaming into the microphone, and the record label guy was at that show, and I worked with him already, and afterwards he came up to me and he said, if you can give me something that sounds like that, I will sign it right away. And I said, maybe I should give you something that sounds like that.
Yeah, I know. Well, I like a lot of your music. To be honest, I have listened for the first time this week, and I was like, oh my god, what is this band about? And to be honest, it has far exceeded my expectations because it's really amazing. And how have you become interested in this music? I mean, because there are different genres and all around the world, but why this?
I don't know. I think I was maybe not so happy when I was younger. I think at the time when I was sort of first becoming exposed to this music, we were sort of all first becoming because it was kind of happening right then. Like I'm talking like the late 70s. Post-punk was just starting, and so I remember going and buying Bela Lugosi's Dead on 12-inch. The week that it came out on import at my record store, and I had no idea what it was. I just thought the album cover looked really cool, and I knew it was going to be something different. And I took it home and I put it on, and I was just like, what is this? And there was no benchmark. There was no other Bauhaus then. There was nothing to really compare them to. So it was so new, and I thought, man, this music, it's beautiful, but it's also sad. And life is beautiful and sad. At least my life certainly was at that time. And I thought that this was something that sort of drew me in. It was very Latino Escola. It was something about it that just kind of like attracted me. And then ultimately, but there weren't not very many of us in my area, people who listened to punk or alternative. It was not common then. And then when I went away to La Escuela Secundaria, is when I met other people who dressed in black, and I said, wow, it's like family. I never felt more like I fit in as I did once I met other people who were in this scene. And it's still the same, and we're all broken. Anybody who's in this scene is definitely broken. But we sort of fix each other, by creating that family. There's a lot of people that don't have a good relationship with their biological family, or maybe went through some really rough things and found new family here in the scene. And so it's important. It's still important. All these years later, it's maybe the most important.
Yeah, I know. Well, you're from New York?
Yes.
Have you visited the CBGB?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh,
for
yeah,
sure.
really?
Yeah. Many times. Of course, it's no longer there anymore, but many times. We used to do parties, occasionally shows at CBGB's, but CBGB's also had in an adjacent space what was called CBGB's Gallery, which was a smaller venue sort of downstairs, and we threw quite a few parties in that space.
Oh, so you are part of that generation.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I was fortunate to see a lot of clubs in New York City that are not there, and to work in a lot of like the Limelight and Palladium and the Building, and just venues that Tunnel, that are long gone, but Twilo, that were in the late, well, even before, in the early 90s, all through the 90s, really. That was it's a very different scene than what it is now.
It's completely different. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for your music. I wish you the best, and keep doing this amazing job.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Rex.